The Atlanta Braves took game one of the most important series of the season, and once again, we are back to even. 5 games left this year. These two teams are tied. What's going to happen? We will discuss on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Game one, Mets versus Braves. Pretty happy it wasn't in Atlanta tonight. What a disappointment. Mets go into that pivotal series. Of course, you want to see them take game one. And Jacob deGrom continues to struggle this season. I mean, Gary Cohen said on the broadcast, did we ever think Jacob deGrom would have an ERA over 3 again? Well, he does now, a 3.08 ERA, and it just has not been a great month for Jacob deGrom. The first start of the month against the Pirates, 7 strong innings, 3 hits allowed, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. Beyond that, has given up 3 earned runs or more in each of his last 4 starts, working on a 4.50 ERA in 5 starts in September after his 6 starts in August went so well, where he pitched to a 1.98 ERA. And you look at this outing, and really, I mean, you look at his season in this month, I mean, despite having all of these outings where he's given up runs, he's recorded double-digit strikeouts in 3 of the 5 starts. His stuff is still good, but he was pitching through a blister. That's why he exited after 6 innings at 86 pitches. He just made some mistakes over the heart of the plate. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, able to hit home runs. Dansby Swanson, able to hit one in the 6th after the 2 home runs came in the 2nd inning, and that came after the Mets took an early lead on the top of the 2nd. Louis Guillorme gets a clutch hit. You had Jeff McNeil lead off that inning with the base hit. Eduardo Escobar got a hit as well. Francisco Alvarez comes up with a runner in scoring position to make his MLB debut, his first at bat. He drills one, but right at the third baseman for a double play ball. Then Louis Guillorme is able to get a hit that drove in a run. 2 of those 3 hits that inning, though, really probably should have been caught by Eddie Rosario in left field. So offensively, it was a bad game for the Mets. They really just didn't get anything going throughout the game. You look at the 8th inning, the only other inning where they scored a run, Tomas Nido hitting a solo homer. Their best rally came in the 9th inning against Kenley Jansen as Mark Canha was hit by a pitch at the Francisco Lindor, struck out. Jeff McNeil got a knock. Eduardo Escobar had a great at-bat to load the bases, drawing a walk, but the Mets were unable to do anything more. Speaking of Alvarez, came up in another big spot in the 9th inning with the bases loaded. A spot where, considering the fact that Kenley Jansen had hit Mark Canha, had walked Eduardo Escobar, maybe it would have made more sense to go to Daniel Vogelbach in that spot with the bases juiced, because he could have kept the line moving, maybe drawn a walk or got a base hit that would have drove in too. Alvarez, though, was going for the death nail. He was going to get the Mets back in and to take a lead. He swung out of his shoes multiple times. The last swing, literally his bat went flying. Something happened multiple times in his debut. He leaves 6 on base. You look at the team left on base, 13. 6 of them come from Francisco Alvarez. I don't know if Mark Vientos could have done better, and I'm not blaming the Mets for their decision to go to Alvarez, but it just shows the position they're in right now, just having no answer for that spot. And I think what we saw in this game, beyond Jacob deGrom and the continued struggles where he did leave those pitches over the heart of the plate, it's advantage Braves when it comes to their bullpen, and it's the fact that the Mets have this specific hole against left-handed pitching. And what hurts about that, or what exasperates that even more, is not having Starling Marte in the equation. I mean, if you had Starling Marte You'd be able to have Jeff McNeil as your starting second baseman. Obviously, that would push Guillorme out of the lineup, and he got one of the RBI hits today. But uh, you're just looking at what the Mets could do, even defensively. If they wanted to, if they had Marte, you could put McNeil at second, Guillorme at third, and have Escobar be your DH. And at least then he's a better option than an Alvarez or a Vientos that just don't have enough experience, and Darren Ruff, who went on the IL today to make room for Francisco Alvarez, whether that is a legitimate neck strain or that is a phantom one to make these roster moves happen. That was what the Mets did today to get Alvarez up, and they DFA'd Alex Claudio, the reliever. So you look at this game and where we are in this series, and it's frustrating because you're waiting for Jacob deGrom in these big games. You had the one against the A's, you have this one where you want to see him carry the Mets to a victory, and he just hasn't. And I'm not going to be one to pin this whole loss on Jacob deGrom, as apparently some who are watching the post game show on SNY, I guess that was their route to take here. I don't know how you blame deGrom in a game where the Mets only scored 2 runs, and the second one came in the eighth inning after he'd been out of the game for 2 innings on a solo homer. I mean, they just didn't do enough offensively in this one. And you want deGrom to be better. You don't want him to give up back-to-back home runs, something that hadn't happened since 2019. But you credit the Braves. I mean, they got themselves in good counts where deGrom had to go after him, and they probably were looking for a specific pitch in those instances, and they got something they could hit, and they did damage. I mean, Austin Riley, maybe he was sitting slider. He was, got a fastball. It was a 1-0 count. Maybe he's sitting slider where he gets that pitch over the heart of the plate, does damage to it. Matt Olson, 3-0 fastball or 3-1 fastball. So it is what it is. And Dansby Swanson, first pitch swinging. It's tough, but I still am not overly concerned about Jacob deGrom moving forward. I mean, he still had 11 strikeouts in this one. He competed, but the Braves were better tonight, and that's what I want to go through a little bit more in the next segment here. You have 5 games left this season, 2 more in this series. And I think we went into this series, and when we laid out all of the implications, it was clear advantage Mets, and pressure was on the Braves. By taking game 1, that pressure goes squarely back on the Mets' shoulders, because if the Braves play the same type of a game in game 2 and get a victory, well, now they've suddenly evened up the season series, and they are on the verge of a sweep. And if they are able to get that final game after taking the first 2, they all but clinch the division. I mean, then they are in that prime position where one win gets them a division title. I think at this point, best case scenario is still the Mets win the final 2 games, and they are in that advantageous seat where they only have to win one in that final series against the Nationals, but at least get one of the final 2. If you're the Mets, you would exit this series tied, and you would have the tiebreaker. And then it comes down to, can you sweep the Nationals? Or will the Marlins do you some favors against the Braves in their final series? So still a little bit of baseball left to play. I'd say a lot of baseball left to play generally throughout the season. Now we're down to it. 5 games left. But the division was not lost tonight, and I don't think that fans should overreact to this one, and I'll explain why in just a minute here. But before we do that, betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for each sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, obviously, you wanted to see the Mets win game 1 of this series, but going in, if we looked at all of the matchups, this was the one that was the diciest for the Mets with Max Fried on the mound. And Max Fried was excellent. The Mets got a break when he exited due to an illness, because the way he was dealing, I don't think the Mets were going to scratch anything across against him. And really, again, as I mentioned in the last segment, the Braves bullpen gives them that advantage because they have all these guys like Raisel Iglesias and Minter and Kenley Jansen, and even Colin McHugh. Jesse Chavez has been great for them this year. They have so many different options to go to that can pitch scoreless innings and really shorten the game for them. Even if their starter exits with an illness after 5 innings pitched, and that was the starter that you really were going to have a tough time with because, for one, he's left-handed and the Mets struggle against lefties. Two, he's Max Fried, and Max Fried, you can make an argument. I mean, go around baseball. I don't know how many other lefty starters you would take right now over Max Fried. I mean, you got Carlos Rodon. He's clearly a lights out lefty starter in the National League in particular. Julio Urias from the Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw still extremely good when healthy, but I mean, there are few that are as talented and effective as Max Fried. And Max Fried, they had a stat today. I can't remember who number one was on the list. I think number three was Adam Wainwright. The number one might have been Garrett Cole, but it was wins leader since 2019. And Fried was second on the list around baseball. So he is great at winning baseball games. He did that for the Braves again. And past him, I mean, Colin McHugh threw the ball well. Raisel Iglesias threw the ball well. Minter threw the ball well. The only guy who didn't really throw the ball well was Kenley Jansen, and the Mets were able to load the bases, but unable to put any runs across against him. And now we'll see the state of the Braves bullpen beyond this. I mean, I think Jansen might have been burned now because he did throw a lot of pitches, or maybe he can go back to back, pitch one more game in a row. I just don't know if going out will impact any of these guys, if any of them will be unavailable. I think the one good thing the Mets did late in that game is they kept it close enough that they had to go to all of their best relievers. So at least when you're playing out the long game of a series, those guys are a little bit more tired tomorrow. Now, Max Scherzer against Kyle Wright is advantage Mets, in my opinion. Wright does have 20 wins this year. He's had a great season, ERA in the low threes, but two of his 5 losses this season have come at the hands of the Mets. And I'm just trying to go based on my preview from yesterday's show at the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it was the last time out for Wright where he got knocked around when you saw Tyler Naquin hit multiple home runs, as well as Daniel Vogelback homered. There was another man. I'm going to look up my preview because I actually wrote this preview for Just Baseball as well, based on the podcast I recorded yesterday. And it was Kyle Wright. Yeah, Pete Alonso homer, Daniel Vogelback homer, Tyler Naquin homer twice. So I imagine Naquin, after homering twice against the guy on August 4th, will be back in the lineup again out in right field. You would imagine Jeff McNeil maybe plays second. I do wonder if Guillorme takes a seat in this one, or maybe they benchmark Canna. I mean, Canna has not been hitting well as of late, so they also could put McNeil out in left field, keep Guillorme at second, Escobar at third. Vogelback will be in the lineup. He also homered against Wright. So you have some guys that had some success against him, and Max Scherzer is a big game pitcher. And at the end of the day, that is the incredible luxury that Steve Cohen afforded Mets fans and afforded his ball club, more importantly, when he gave him $130 million over a 3-year deal. Because Jacob deGrom comes up a little bit short. Your game 2 starter is Max Scherzer. And Scherzer is a big game pitcher. He's not going to be phased by that Braves lineup. And you feel pretty confident he can go out, put up a bunch of zeros, and you hope this Mets lineup can do some damage against Wright. Because if you can win that game, a lot of the pressure will be off in the final one, because obviously you win this series. That is exactly what the Mets had to do to put themselves in the driver's seat to clinch this division when they play the Nats. But at least if you grab Saturday's game and you get one, you aren't going to be at a massive disadvantage. You will have earned the season series victory, and you'll have that tiebreaker, which is vitally important in a season where we're not playing a game 163. Anyway, 5 games left to play. These two teams still tied. As I said on yesterday's show, I'll reiterate, I'm recording shows after every single game of this pivotal series. So I'll have another one for you tomorrow night. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.